to our 2024 International Media Briefing. We've got colleagues from the international press from all over the world joining us this morning for our 40 to 45 minute International Media Briefing, which we're doing for the first time here live and online, although it will be available, all of this, to download for you to view later as well. We've got a busy program this morning in our media briefing, which I'll be moderating and taking us through the various steps that we have planned. We're going to be hearing in a moment from the director of FRUIT Logistica, from Kai Mangelberger. I've got 5 key questions for Kai that he'll be answering for us, and then we're going to be talking about the hot topic of our international trend report with the author of the trend report, but also Mike Knowles of Fruitnet, and we're joined from Washington, D.C., where it's early morning, by Tom Stenzel, who's the executive director of the CEA Alliance, the Controlled Environment Agriculture Alliance, and of course by a familiar face, another familiar face to all of us, the fruit and vegetable strategist from Rabobank, who appears on every stage that there is of importance in the world, and that's Cindy van Rijswijk. But I'll come to those, our panel, in due course. We'll have then, of course, the opportunity to ask questions, so please use that chat function that there is, and they're all used to at the top of the screen, to put your questions, and I'll make sure I put them to our speakers, to Kai, to Tom, to Cindy, and to Mike, and then we'll wrap up with a short discussion, or a short explanation rather, from Mike about some of the other content that's happening on the show floor over 3 days next week in Berlin at FRUIT Logistica. And and then I'll say goodbye to all of you and wish you safe travels to come to see us next week, already in Berlin. So let's turn firstly to our event director, to the director of FRUIT Logistica, to Kai Mangelberger. Kai took on the role a few years ago, and we're already seeing some pretty big and very welcome changes to what remains the world's biggest and most important meeting of the fresh fruit and vegetable business on the planet that is Earth. And let's go now to live to Berlin and talk to Kai Mangelberger, the director of the show. Kai, I've got 5 key questions for you. The first one: what are some of the key figures that we're expecting, or we can see at this year's FRUIT Logistica? Take us through some of the headlines. Where's Kai gone? He's disappeared. Kai, come back. Well, I don't know where he's got to, but he was supposed to be there. And as it is, the wonders of technology has meant that Kai has all of a sudden gone. So what I might do while Kai is being found is I'll actually come on then to the second part of our program. We'll come back to Kai later, and that is this whole question about the CEA, Controlled Environment Agriculture, and the subject of the trend report. That Mike is Kai back? These are the wonders of live television. There you are, Kai. Okay, let's go back to Kai Mangelberger, and I'll come to you guys on the trend report. So you go and relax for a moment, and I'll come back to Kai. Kai, you can hear me, I hope. I was explaining before you did that little disappearance, just to keep me on my toes, that I wanted to ask you some 5 key questions about what's happening at FRUIT Logistica this year. We've seen quite a number of changes in recent years, which have all been very welcome at FRUIT Logistica, and I think there are more things that are happening this year too. So tell us, what are some of the key figures at FRUIT Logistica in 2024?
Well, we are growing in all categories, especially in terms of exhibitors, exhibition space, but also in terms of internationality. So that means that we have this year 2,770 exhibitors. Compared to last year, there we had 2,610 exhibitors. And they're all coming from a total of 94 countries. With the top 3 nations are still Italy, the Netherlands, Italy, followed by Germany and France. And well, beside the fact that we grow with exhibitors in general, we have also a 10% growth of organic exhibitors, so which take part in our organic route. So there are 211 exhibitors who sent us the documents and certifications proving that they display organic products. So, and concerning buyers and trade visitors, we expect them from a total of 140 countries, but the ticket sale is still ongoing. So there's still 1 week to go to Fruit Logistica, but we see over the entire period that the figures are higher than last year. So we expect also there quite a good number of trade visitors and buyers from all around the world. Maybe the last figure is we're using 26 exhibition halls and 5 entrances. So it will be a huge event here in Berlin.
The motto that we see of the trade show, it remains very, very important. This question of the heart, it being at the heartbeat of the global business.
Yeah, the idea is that we all feel the energy, the pulse of this industry when we are coming together here in Berlin, well, and spreading this energy ourselves as well.
Good. You talked about the internationality of the show, the fact that it's such an international show. That's always been obvious to all of us who've been coming over so many years. 94 countries represented this year. I noticed that we have buyers and trade visitors from over 140 countries. So you can't get a more international show if you tried. Could you please give us some of the more specific details on the regions that are represented at Fruit Logistica in 2024?
Yeah, indeed. Our exhibitors coming from all continents. You always have to keep in mind that only 10% of our exhibitors are from Germany, so 90% are from abroad, which is quite unusual for all trade fairs, but especially in the fruit business, there's not such a show which is so international. So we're not a German show, but international. And the regions which are growing very strong are Middle East and North Africa, for example, Egypt, but especially Asia. We saw this also in September at Asia Fruit Logistica. Of course, the restrictions concerning the pandemic are over. So there is really a strong need, or they're really keen on getting back to the market. So the strongest growth of all exhibitors we recognized in China. So they almost tripled their size compared to last year, and they're bigger than before the pandemic. So they're really eager to come back to Berlin.
And that's also quite significant because it just happens as China celebrates Chinese New Year.
Yes,
so
on Saturday.
The celebration of Chinese New Year hasn't prevented a really strong participation from China this year, which is really great news. You also have a strong participation from Spain as well. Is that right?
Yeah, last year we had a record there, a record number of participation, and they remain on this high level. And even Italy, which is always our top exhibiting country, both in terms of number of exhibitors, but also in terms of space, they were even able to grow again, to come bigger than last year to Fruit Logistica. And in total, every second company, or no, every second nation is now bigger than before the pandemic. So
it's really, really back. The pandemic, the effects of the pandemic have disappeared.
Yeah, the pandemic in such a way for the exhibition is over. We just keep in mind that last year when we met in Berlin, there were still restrictions. In public transport, you have to wear a mask. So that wasn't a topic. Also ahead of the show, that wasn't a topic anymore.
Yeah, that's really excellent news. And it always amazes me how essentially the community of fruit and vegetables that there are in countries like Spain and Italy decamp en masse to your city of Berlin in that week of February when Fruit Logistica is on. So we've, as I said, had a number of different crises in recent years. The question of the pandemic was one, but how do you think the mood how do you judge the mood of the fruit and vegetable sector that's attending Fruit Logistica in 2024? How do you see that yourself?
Of course, at the moment, I see the protests of farmers and producers on the streets in many European countries, France and Germany and others as well, because of cuts in subsidies, but also because of the increasing bureaucracy and regulations. So that will be a concern, and that will be also a topic on site, definitely. But to have maybe a more general look, we produce a European statistic handbook as every year, and we published it today, so you can download it for free on our website. And it shows not only the mood of the industry, but also gives some more statistical details and data about the current situation of at least of the European market, as well as of some specific countries. And there we see that on the one hand, we have this geopolitical factors which have an effect. But we see also the climate change, especially water is a very big topic, but also the higher costs for energy, for staff, for logistics. So yeah, it's still a very challenging environment. But that's why people are coming to Fruit Logistica, because in times of crisis, you need to spread your risk. I mean, that's basic knowledge. And you need many partners, several partners from several countries to be on the safe side. And of course, you need also the latest innovations in technology. And that's what you can find here in Berlin. And that's why people are coming to Berlin.
Yes, indeed. I'm moderating, in fact, a session on this water scarcity issue for Global Gap on the Thursday afternoon at the show. It's a big topic, and it's going to be one of the things I'm talking about in my Fruitbox podcast as well. Very soon. But tell us what is new at Fruit Logistica in 2024, Kai.
Well, for me, most important, very interesting, and I like it very much, is the Fruit Logistica Innovation Award. And this year we will have a new category there. So we will still award the best innovation in fresh produce, but we would like to put in focus also on the technology part. So there will be a Fruit Logistica Innovation Award technology taking place on the first level at Entrance South, where we will have innovations in this field. And there will be also a guided tour to all the innovations of the technology segment. And then the trade visitors decide who is really the innovation of the year. So there will be the voting done by the trade visitors, as they are the experts of the various kind of products.
And this tour, Kai, is that for everybody, or is it just for media?
No, that's a tour for everybody. So okay. The media is also allowed to join, but actually it's for the trade visitors as well. And they can register for free. And then we will visit the 5 nominees of the technology segment, which can be visited of one's own also, of course.
And tell us about Farming Forward. This is another element that's new.
There we have a complete new stage, which the language will be English only, but there we will focus on digitalization, automation topics, such as smart agri. We will have greenhouse technology on stage and controlled environment agriculture. And there I'm glad that we have some renowned partners like this Tom Stenzel with the CEA Alliance, but also very well-known companies in this program. And on Friday, even the Dutch University of Wageningen, which will do for the first time a science symposium at Fruit Logistica, so that we can connect science and the business with each other. And I think it fits also very well with our startup area taking place on the same day, just the other hall, just beside. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be a great environment to create also future innovations.
Absolutely. You've been very, very busy, you and your colleagues and also your partners at Fruitnet organising this. Tell us more about the expanded services for trade visitors and the other things you're doing there.
Beside this guided tour for the FLIA Technology Award, we will have some more networking opportunities. So there's a lot of business done at Fruit Logistica at the exhibition stands, but we also would like to have a closer look on this networking issues. And as always, we have a free welcome coffee for trade visitors 1 hour before the fair starts at the entrance hall 7. But in the afternoon or in the evening, we will have an after-work event as well at the entrance north and entrance south, where there will be some musicians. We will have drinks. We have a relaxed atmosphere. And I think it's a good point to end the day together in a nice atmosphere rather than waiting for a taxi outside. Maybe that's a good idea. We will have also a welcome party for the first time, not on the fairgrounds, but in a former theater. And it should be a little bit more party, less reception. So I think that's quite interesting. And it was also open, or it is open for trade visitors this year, but it is already sold out. So exhibitors have still the chance to register for some last tickets, but the trade visitor tickets are sold out. And also sold out is our gold upgrade, at least for the permanent pass. So we have a new upgrade where you can access a gold lounge, and it seems to work very well. So this is sold out as well.
Wonderful. How many people are expected at this welcome party?
We'll see. So the maximum size would be 1,000. Then it will be a little bit crowded, but we are prepared. And the topic is Berlin. So we will offer some Berlin street food like Currywurst and Döner, but also some specific Berlin drinks like Berliner Luft, which is Berlin air. It is a peppermint liqueur. We'll try it.
Well, I'm very even more happy that I've got my ticket for the welcome party. I know that many people I know in the business say that Week in Berlin is the most exhausting of the year, and that's to do with all the business they do. But I suspect it's also to do with the amount of networking they get up to as well. But tell me finally, Kai, as the director of FRUIT Logistica, and this is, I think, your third or fourth edition. What are you expecting from this edition? What are your hopes and wishes for 2024?
It's my third edition. I started within the pandemic, and actually I wanted to feel myself the heartbeat of fresh produce, which is our topic. But I also hope that all the visitors and exhibitors feel this heartbeat, feel this vivid atmosphere in the hall, being part of it, and celebrate that everyone is coming together at one place, networking, making new contacts. And if it turns out for the visitors and exhibitors, then my heartbeat jumps for joy, then I'm satisfied.
Excellent. Well, I know that in those 3 years that you've been in charge at FRUIT Logistica, you've made some really excellent improvements and changes and developments at the show, which I think is very, very welcome. And I think this media briefing that we're having today online is part of that process of change, and that's good. And we look forward to seeing you next week in Berlin, Kai. And I'm sure colleagues of the press, if they want to stop and talk to you and get more detail, they can. And I know that you're very busy through the 3 days, as all of your colleagues are. But you're in and around the press centre every so often. So please do take the opportunity to collar Kai and to get more information if you want to. And I know that Kai and his colleagues at Messe Berlin and at FRUIT Logistica are always very, very helpful with information, with photographs. The whole digitalization of the show has also been excellent over recent years, and everything is so much more readily available and easily available than ever. So I would encourage all of my fellow colleagues of the press to make maximum use of it. Kai, thank you very much indeed for now, for those key numbers of what's happening at FRUIT Logistica in this year. Let's turn now to an element that Kai talked about there in terms of the content, and I'll bring in now my excellent panelists and speakers that are joining me. Early morning for Tom Stenzel, the Executive Director of the Controlled Environment Agriculture Alliance over there in Washington, D.C. It's on standard CET, Central European Time, for Cindy van Rijswijk, the strategist at Fruit and Vegetables at Rabobank. And it's on the same time zone as me for Mike Knowles, the Managing Director of Fruitnet Europe and the editor of our excellent trend report for 2024. Mike is here in the United Kingdom, where I am too. So let's turn to this subject of CEA. It's something that kind of has come from nowhere to somewhere very, very quickly. and is an acronym that we're all getting used to. Tom, to you over there early morning in Washington, D.C., CEA is what exactly? Explain it a little bit more, if you would.
Sure. Well, good morning, Chris, and great to be with all of you this morning. I know listening to Kai just now, I'm even more excited to be coming to Berlin. So I'll be arriving on Monday and look forward to seeing all of my colleagues. I think, as many of you know, I had the good fortune to manage the United Fresh Produce Association for almost 30 years. When I retired, I started doing a little bit of consulting business, and this new group, the CEA Alliance, asked me to try to help out a little bit. And I'm thinking, well, CEA, it's kind of a new term. I've come to understand we've been doing CEA for 50 years, 100 years. The Dutch taught us how to grow in greenhouses a long time ago. The tomato industry has certainly been a leader in this area. I think the term controlled environment agriculture has started to come into the forefront with leafy greens, with more people now growing leafy greens indoors, both in a greenhouse, high-tech glass greenhouse, but also in the new vertical farms. And we see a variety around the world of different types of production systems. There are going to be more berries coming. Someone asked me the other day, well, how many commodities can you grow indoors? I think it's almost limitless. Now, that doesn't mean you can grow them profitably, but the amount of research is going on. We see the growth of indoor farming, controlled environment agriculture is something that's just going to continue to expand throughout our industry.
And Tom, is this driven by climate change largely, that people realize that they need to control literally the environment in which they're growing produce?
Yeah, Chris, I think there are a number of factors. Climate change is certainly one of them. And you mentioned you're doing the seminar on water. Water availability in many of the production regions where we've grown fruits and vegetables is being limited. That's one. Transportation, the cost of transportation is another. Domestic production is something that's important. But what we're also finding is that it's such a quality and freshness play. And as we all know, in this fresh fruit and vegetable industry, that is the key, is delivering the best quality, freshest product to the consumer. When you can grow 365 days a year, consistent quality, and deliver it within 24 hours to the consumer, you're going to win. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of this production.
But there has been this kind of combination of this technology, but also the how should I say, the money, the dollars and cents, which has meant that this has been a big thing in the United States, in North America in particular. But it's spreading now all over the world, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, we're very pleased to be working with Kai and his team. We are hosting 6 different workshops on the Farming Forward stage this year at FRUIT Logistica. We have 21 speakers from around the globe, from Asia, from the EU, from the UK, and from the Americas. So it really is a global phenomenon at this point. You mentioned money. That's maybe the elephant in the room. It's very expensive. You put up a new farm of decent size, you're talking perhaps $100 million US. That's not a small investment, but those costs, I believe, are becoming more manageable. We've heard some stories. There have been some companies. I think with any new tech, you're going to see some make it and some fall by the wayside. But we're clearly seeing that this is an area of continuing investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always think when I see an electric car next to mine in the traffic queue in London that it's remarkable that we have electric cars, and they've come from nowhere to somewhere in a matter of a few years. But on this question of as it were the development of the industry and these particular issues, you mentioned, Tom, a moment ago, and this is where I'll bring in Cindy, the importance of the Netherlands as a centre for glasshouse production. You've been growing in glasshouses for centuries now. It's something that started, I think, in the early 20th century, if not the 19th century, or perhaps even earlier. And what is it, Cindy, when you look at CEA, that you think, and you track this, I know, a lot, that is so significant about this latest iteration, if we can call it that, of glasshouse growing? Why is it so important today, in your opinion?
Like you say, it has been important for quite a while already in some countries. So depending on the climate and so on. But yeah, I agree completely with Tom. I think the consistency and quality are really important. And on top of that, now more recently, water availability, but also more control over agrochemical use has become more important. In a controlled environment, it's easier to grow without any chemicals. So, and there's many other factors, like Tom already said, closeness to the consumer and so on. So there's lots of benefits of growing in a controlled environment.
Absolutely. And do you detect a growing consumer acceptance of controlled environment production? There used to be, how should I say, consumers are very happy perhaps to have a glass house at the end of their garden where they grow their tomatoes, but they've always been thinking, oh, we need to have fruit and vegetables grown outdoors in the big wild where it's natural, and now you're growing them in these big factories. That was the criticism often of glasshouse production in the past, but it seems to be much more accepted these days.
There's quite some misperception on this. I think even in southern European countries like Spain, all of the tomato production is covered by plastic greenhouses. So it has not been grown outdoors already for a long time. In the European market, in the US market, this is more of a recent phenomenon that they switch from outdoor to indoor cultivation. But in Europe, most of the fresh market tomatoes, sweet peppers, cucumbers have been grown in some kind of controlled environment. So it's not a, yeah.
It's just as Tom mentioned earlier, the technology of this production is becoming much more sophisticated than simply putting a product under a sheet of glass or a sheet of plastic.
Yeah,
Tom?
definitely. But yeah.
No, that's certainly the case. A high degree of automation. We have many of the growers now who human hands never touch the product, from automatic seeding all the way through packaging. So it's just a transforming kind of thing in the industry. I'll mention one other thing, Chris. You mentioned the narrative of some people not wanting produce grown indoors. I think in the U.S., the tomato market gives us a good example. We're now about 85% of all tomatoes sold in retail supermarkets are grown indoors. It's been a transformation over the past 20 years, 30 years. The quality, the taste, the flavors. Today, most of the outdoor tomato production goes to food service, to the quick service chains. But it really has sort of become a dominant force in the market.
I was in the last time I was in North America, which was going back just before the pandemic. I was very lucky to visit parts of Ontario across the border from the States into Canada to see some enormous glasshouse production there. I thought glasshouse was a big win. I saw them in the Netherlands, but of course I should have expected they would have been even bigger in North America. I'll come to Mike Knowles in a minute. Before I do, I'd just like to go back to Cindy on this question of, and Tom had raised it in his first comments about the question of money and the huge investments that are needed these days. And I know from tracking your comments on LinkedIn in particular, and I know you've written about this for us and for other publications as well, Cindy, the whole issue of vertical farming has been, very much on your radar in recent years. And in your comments are often about the huge investments that's required. Tom mentioned it as well, and how these investments don't always come off. And there have been some pretty major casualties in the sector. Does that mean that vertical farming is just not going to feature in future, or do you see it as a technology with a great future ahead of itself?
Yeah, it definitely has a future ahead, but it will remain a niche. You cannot expect that commodity crops will be grown in such an expensive environment. It costs about 10 million euros per hectare. So to return that investment requires a lot from growers. So cultivation skills, labor availability, energy, cheap energy, the market that's right. You still have to compete with cheaper produce often. Consumer, has to be there. So there's a lot of factors. Everything needs to be right. So it's not easy. So I think it has been underestimated what it takes to grow, produce in such an environment. It's not like a factory producing toilet paper or screws. It's still a living organism plant. So it's not just pushing a button, even when it is AI powered, like some companies sell it. It needs lots of knowledge as well. So also for financiers, for investors, for banks, you need lots of knowledge to judge whether the business case is right or not. And that's not easy.
And it also requires, of course, a consumer market and a retail market that's
that
in a
should be the
position to accept
starting
these
point,
products.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I gave a talk recently that someone was talking about this narrative of vertical farming is not going to work. This is the end, and I suggest otherwise, that this is not the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. We have just gone through this startup phase, and these companies are learning so much through this process. There's an increasing standardization. There's an increasing desire. You don't have to invent everything yourself. I firmly believe we're going to see vertical farming as a key part of our future.
Yeah. Well, it
we
sounds
already have clients that have integrated in their traditional production. So, for example, the starting phase.
Yes.
In the nursery stage of production, they use a vertical farm and then move the products to a more traditional greenhouse, for example. So, and that works pretty well, I can tell.
Yep.
Sounds like you've got the next 30 years of your career pretty busy there, Tom. Let's turn now to Mike Knowles, our Managing Director of Fruitnet Europe, who's also the author, among the many things he does, the author of the excellent trend report that comes out at FRUIT Logistica. Mike, this has been the subject of your extensive report. Tell us a bit about what you've been talking about in the report, which is published, I know, next week.
That's right, Chris. Yeah, and it's reassuring to hear, these two fantastic experts we have with us, Cindy and Tom, talking about exactly that. The vertical farming has been kind of the poster child of controlled environment agriculture, because it captures the attention. You see great space age towers of produce being produced under lights in trays. One of the things I learnt about when I put this report together was Cindy and I talked about a boom and bust cycle and what's been happening in vertical farming. And as you said, there've been some very high profile failures. I came across this thing called Gartner's hype cycle, which is exactly the kind of trite stuff that sometimes appears on LinkedIn, but I like it. It says that the technology triggers have driven us to the peak of inflated expectations. From there, we have descended into a trough of disillusionment. So I think that's where we find ourselves now with vertical farming, especially in the mainstream media. But on the horizon, we can see the slope of enlightenment, and beyond it, and I think that's what Cindy and Tom have alluded to, is the plateau of productivity. So really what I found in the report and putting this together is that, vertical farming is not the whole story when it comes to controlled environment agriculture. But behind it, in vertical farming, there are some very interesting technological developments, some of which burn bright, some of which fail, and that feeds into the much bigger arena, which is CEA. And in that sector, we've got some very highly advanced forms of indoor farming emerging. They're more measured, they're more controlled, they're more sustainable. And that's happening especially in the greenhouse arena. But tantalizingly, and this might be 30, 40 years off, one of the people I spoke to who runs a vertical farm producing leafy salads, trying berries as well, they said, well, actually, a lot of these developments in AI, in smart farming, machine learning, Internet of Things, or wiring all these things up to production indoors, why can they not be outdoors? So eventually they might be outdoors. They might actually be things where you can monitor the irrigation, you can control the sunlight in some way, you can do things with the soil and hook it up to systems, monitor it on your smartphone as a grower, and the same could be happening outdoors, but that's a long way off.
I think technologies are available and have been for some time, and I think it's as the internet and the digitalization of our world grows and things get faster, that we'll see that. I mean, I think when I pick up my mobile phone and it says 5G, and I think how 5G compares to what 3G used to be like, and when I see 3G come up on my phone, it's a disaster, whereas it used to be the fastest thing in town a few years ago. And I'm old enough to remember when Internet 1.0 was around 20 years ago, which was as nothing to how we are today and how we will be, I think, in future. The chat is open for questions, and I'm seeing some coming through. I've got one from a chap called Simon Berger, who's a freelance journalist, who's asking us, what role does AI play in the fruit sector already, and is this going to be a topic that's addressed in the supporting program? Mike, we've talked about the supporting program. Is AI one of the subjects? So we're going to talk about the supporting program. Is AI going to be on there? And also, is there a relevance, do you think, to CEA? And I'll come to Tom and Cindy about that as well. But on the supporting program, Mike?
Absolutely. Well, if we take the trend report first, AI crops up a lot. AI is definitely one of those latest technologies in various forms that's being used and trialed and explored in vertical farming in particular, but also in greenhouses and various other forms of indoor farming. So, for example, there's technology now that's been developed where you can grow tomatoes, say, or berries, and you can listen in to what the plant is saying. You can put a probe on the roots or in the stem, and you can understand, is there some kind of stress happening to that plant? Is the temperature wrong, or are there insects, pests knocking around? And yeah, so AI is very, very important. It also features heavily on the program, which I can come to in a moment.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'll come to Tom briefly. Tom, on this question of AI, is that something that you talk about a lot, and it's being worked upon a lot among your membership in the Alliance?
Yeah, I think certainly the larger companies and vertical, but both greenhouse as well. It's an emerging important part of the process. You know, we use the word controlled. You think about, you're in that closed environment, and you can change the CO2, you can change the temperature, you can change the lighting, you can go to different spectrum, the far red versus other lights. You can change those things moment to moment. We have to have a way to capture that data and understand what it means to the plant. As Cindy said, these are still biological systems that are growing, but you tweak one thing and AI is helping us to be able to understand what impact that has on the plant's growth. So I do see it as an important part of the future here.
Yeah. Cindy?
Yeah, I think many of the greenhouse managers already use management decisions support software, which is using some kind of machine learning or AI. And it also enables the bigger companies to grow in size without having to hire more growers. I think that's a big benefit, because it's extremely difficult to find that very specialized skilled labor to operate greenhouses, actually. And that's very helpful for that.
Well, I think the AI is also having an impact, isn't it, in just conventional packhouse technology as well, in terms of grading and sorting and so on. And I think we've not seen still the quite significant extent in which artificial intelligence is going to make a huge difference to the way in which that post-harvest handling of fruit and vegetables happens. I think, if I may, Tom, Cindy, and Mike, I'll bring an end now to this very interesting discussion about CEA. I don't have any more questions about CEA on the chat, but I will. Oh, actually, sorry, I do. Forgive me. I should have put my glasses on at that point. I've got a question from Sylvia Richter, and she has a particular two particular questions for Tom, which I'll go to you straight away, Tom. What share does CEA have in total fruit and vegetable cultivation, and where do you see its share in 2050? Gosh, that's a difficult one. In 20 years' time. Now, get out your crystal ball and tell us.
Great. So I mentioned the tomato market here in the Americas, North America, up to 85% of greenhouse tomatoes in the retail supermarket. And that includes the other vine crops, cucumbers, pepper, etc. In the leafy greens sector today in the North American market, about 5% of all the leafy salads are grown indoors. There are certain regions where that penetration is even higher. In the northeastern part of the U.S., kind of the farthest point away from where the production occurs, 3,000 miles away, we're up to about 15% of that leafy salad market in the northeastern states. So I think that will continue to grow. 2050, will this replace outdoor agriculture? No, I don't think anybody's going to predict that. You'll see, again, the increasing quality and freshness will play a major role. I'm anticipating that the berry market is going to be one of the major growth areas for several reasons, one of which is the labor required in outdoor harvesting. Once we are able to perfect growing berries indoors, I think you're going to see that take on a much greater market share as well.
I think that's answered the second question that Sylvia had about the role that the CEA might play in the cultivation of staple crops, as she calls them. Let's turn to another question. I've got a question also, I think, coming from the German-speaking world. Heiner Sigmund, who's asking, is vertical farming an option to include cities in growing crops, so enlarging the usable space for agriculture? After all, you can't get any closer to consumers. Cindy, let me throw that one to you about, I suppose, city farming that will see the growth, or the growing of market gardens, which actually was always a factor in agriculture, becoming much more prevalent in urban the urban environment. Do you see that?
From an economic point of view, the city centers are not always the best option for vertical farms. Often the better option is just outside of the city, where there's easier distribution. Also within a city, you compete with the property market, with very expensive office space. Sometimes it's even not safe to use a lot of electricity and water in some buildings in the city. It's not always the best option, although it is very close to the consumer, actually.
Mike?
Yeah, well, in the trend report, we raised the point that in Paris, one of the biggest rooftop farms exists. It's actually on top of the VIP Paris Expo. It's another big expo center. Maybe it's an idea for Kai. Build a big rooftop farm in Berlin. But there was an agency that worked out that if they were going to make Paris self-sufficient in fruit and vegetables for its entire population, they would need 16,000 hectares, and that happens to be 1.5 times the size of Paris. And I don't know if anyone's ever tried to buy a flat in Paris. I haven't, but I imagine it's probably quite expensive.
Well, I was in Paris just a few days ago, and I can confirm it's certainly expensive. But I can also confirm that there are now some very interesting kind of urban, small-scale production developments going on to give what in Italy they call 0-kilometer agriculture. So produce that's grown as close to the consumer as possible. But I think, as the point you make very well, Mike, it's going to be difficult to attain the kind of levels of demand that are required. Although looking at the blockades that are promised for Paris, or have been promised for Paris over these last few days, perhaps they could do well to start growing more fruits and vegetables on their rooftops in Paris. That's a silly comment, and I shouldn't have made it, but there we are. Let's turn, Mike, if we could, briefly to the content program. Oh, well, actually, before I do, excuse me, I see I've got Kai still with us. And I have a couple of questions, actually, that have come, which are not on the subject of CEA, but have come on for Kai that I would like to ask now, if I may. One comes from our excellent colleague, Michael Schotten, who runs Fruchthandel magazine, is the editor there in Düsseldorf. And he says, I have the impression that emerging countries in particular, for example, from Africa, are increasingly looking for market access to Europe and are using Fruit Logistica in particular for this purpose. One example is Kenya, which has invested heavily in its avocado production. How important are these emerging markets for the trade fair? You mentioned that they've become much more important in recent years, Kai. And Kai, you have to unmute yourself, which is the...
Yes, the popular problem. No,
Yes.
indeed. So specifically, Kenya is growing at Fruit Logistica, but not only Kenya. I mentioned North Africa, which is probably most important, but it refers to the entire continent, that we see that there is a growth, that there is an interest in coming to Europe or to the world, whatever, but especially coming to Fruit Logistica. And so this area is growing very fast in Hall 26, which is also close to Asia and Americas, which makes us, where we have a very international area combined with the logistics part. I think that the advantage of Fruit Logistica is that, as mentioned before, we are truly international and we don't have any, need to focus on an export of a certain nation, or so we are glad about everyone. We are a neutral platform for trade, and our aim is indeed to get everyone from around the world to Berlin and to give everyone the same opportunity to be present. I think that's something what makes it, especially for emerging countries, easier to get access to this trade fair, because they're also in the center of everything. So being part of it.
And the role that Africa might play as the fruit and vegetable basket of Europe in future is perhaps a subject for a future trend report, but that's certainly a very interesting development that we will, I think, almost surely see in the next several years. You mentioned about the visitors, Kai. Another question from another freelancer, Gerardo Alvarez, who's asking which international politicians are taking part in Fruit Logistica this year. It's always a stop-off and an important one for our political leaders in Europe and elsewhere.
But first of all, we are a trade fair for the trade rather than politicians. But there are a lot of politicians coming. So we have ministers of agriculture and food from Greece, from Ecuador, and Moldova, but also ambassadors or politicians from the regional level, especially from Spain, but from many different countries.
And also your home market there in Germany. I think it's always a destination for your own domestic politicians in Germany.
So there will be domestic politicians, but the minister this year, I think he was very often on our fairgrounds during Grüne Woche, which is a trade fair taking place just some weeks ago. So this year we will have other politicians there as well.
Yeah, good. Good. I think that probably brings us. Let me just check if there are any further questions. No more. Although I do have a very nice comment from our friend Stefano Malavoli from My Fruit in Italy, who says he just wanted to pay a nice compliment, which is very generous of him, being an Italian. That's exactly the kind of thing that lovely Italian people do, which is to pay lovely compliments. And he says it's always a pleasure and a privilege to stay up to date on what is happening and what will happen in the industry. And thanks for the updates that he gets from Fruitnet, from Fruit Logistica and its network that are provided directly and indirectly. Thank you, Stefano, for those very kind comments. I see somebody's put a little love heart against that, which is exactly what should happen. So thank you to Tom and to Cindy, and I'll turn now, if I may, and to you, Kai, of course, and I'll turn to Mike now to bring us toward the end of this international media preview briefing, just to talk to us a little bit about the event program, because that's a very busy thing that you and your colleagues at Fruitnet have put together again for us in 2024.
That's right, Chris. Yeah, the various content stages that you find around the halls in Berlin at Fruit Logistica, all of those sessions are managed by Fruitnet Media International, albeit I realise Tom and his colleagues have taken care of one part of the farming forward stage, which is the new one, which he's mentioned. I should also pay tribute to my colleague Carsten Ray, who heads that up in Germany and does the lion's share of the work on that. But yeah, we mentioned AI. AI is going to be a big feature of some of the stages, and nowhere is that less true than on the Fresh Produce Forum. The Fresh Produce Forum is really to look at those kind of big picture issues, those big picture topics, and we'll be looking at AI in all parts of the business there, how it can, for example, balance supply and demand, and we'll be looking at the impact of things like new packaging legislation. The drive to sustainability is making it harder in some cases to get the right packaging formats and give people the produce they want in the condition that they need it, consumers, that is. We also have the Future Lab in Hall 7.2A, where we'll look at new tech developments, looking at things like data and how that can be used to cope with climate stress, advanced greenhouses, which we talked about. I think somebody's talking about greenhouses pioneered in Antarctica, which will be interesting. The logistics hub in Hall 26, there's lots going on in logistics, drought in the Panama Canal, disruption in the Red Sea that lots of people know about. But there are opportunities for growth, and we'll be looking at things that are happening there. We'll also be talking about the world's first cable car system for fresh produce, which I highly recommend. That's on the Friday. In Hall 5.1, we have the tech stage, loads of great, interesting talks about new technical solutions. The farming forward stage, which Tom has mentioned, that's in Hall 3.1. Lots of stuff about digitization and smart agri on one day, and then the CEA Alliance sessions that Tom has told us all about. And then on Friday in 5.1, it becomes the startup stage. So that's where we'll be hearing about lots of really great startup companies doing crazy things like developing smart inks that change according to product quality, or something that I'm hoping to try, which is a physical exoskeleton that can help packhouse workers lift heavy things. So I might become stronger on the Friday. And then, of course, Kai has mentioned the FLIA and the FLIA technology, the Innovation Awards, and those recognize outstanding innovations along the whole fruit and veg supply chain. And that will be announced on Friday. So we look forward to that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike. It just demonstrates that Fruit Logistica isn't just about, as it were, the exhibition. It's also about the content. And the content has been so much part of the show for, ever since it started all those many years ago. I should also say that Fruit Logistica is about the products, but it's also about the people. And for the first time this year, Fruit Logistica is having a little photograph exhibition. And it's going to be showing, can you see this? The faces of fresh produce. So all of you can go to Hall 27, which is one of the newer halls and a really lovely hall. And there's a big exhibition of photographs, some fine photographs of people in our wonderful world of fruits and vegetables. So go and have a look there too. It's on for all 3 days. And the photographs are by a photographer who is generally at the Cannes and Venice film festivals, taking pictures of the superstars of cinema, and she has taken some wonderful portraits of the superstars of our business of fresh fruits and vegetables. So do pop by to Hall 27 to see that. Ladies and gentlemen of the international press, brings us to the end of our first online international media briefing. Thank you so much for taking part. I'd like to thank especially our four excellent speakers this morning, to Tom, who's got up very early to be with us, and we're looking forward to seeing him on time and away from the jet lag next week in Berlin. Thank you very much indeed to Cindy joining us from the Netherlands. Again, see you next week in Berlin. To Mike from here in London, who will be with us, of course, in Berlin next week, and our host next week in the wonderful city of Berlin, to Kai Mangelberger. We're looking forward to seeing you. Thank you for taking us through all the wonderful things that are planned. So, ladies and gentlemen of the press, please come and be with us next week, and we will be making available, as I mentioned earlier, the video of this session is going to be available on demand later, so you can go and check through any of the things that you missed or want to hear again. It will be available to download from the website later on today. Don't forget, please, to register if you're a member of the press. You need a press card. rather a press pass to get into the show, to get also into the excellent the press centre up there in Hall 7 wherever it is, I can't remember, but I know exactly where it is when I get there. I'm sure we're all going to have a fantastic show. I know we're all looking forward to it, and we look forward to seeing you then next week from the 7th to the 9th of February in the wonderful city of Berlin. So see you next week. Bis bald, and safe travels. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.